This is Dr. Grande. Welcome to the murder part. On tonight's episode, we'll be looking at the case of Natalee Ann Holloway. I want to welcome my co-host, Jeff. How you doing?
Very good, very good. How are you?
Doing well. Mike, how you been?
Been pretty good.
So what do you guys think of this case just initially before we get into the details? Just overall impressions as we kind of introduce it.
I mean, you go on vacation right after high school, and you're with, 100-something odd people, and I don't know, it's kind of the last thing you expect. But at the same time, right after high school, you're in another country, and you're going to expect a lot of people are drinking and so forth. It could be a recipe for disaster. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here.
Struck me as kind of a complete catastrophe of investigation.
Yeah.
And some potential, political corruption and things going on. Just a really difficult case from the get-go because of the mishandling by investigators.
Yeah, as with many of the high-profile cases, a terrible investigation is a key part of this case. And it makes you wonder how many less popular, less notorious cases have bad investigation too. Maybe we just see it more on these cases because they're high-profile. It happens all the time.
The more high profile it is, the more likely people are going to be watching these things. And I think that does play a role in some of the investigative snafus, like people who are doing the investigations, be they part of the police or prosecutor's office or private investigators, when they know that they have the eyes of the media on them, they're not going to be trying to dot every I, cross every T. They're going to try and get results.
That's a good point, because that was the media and the parents of the victim, we'll talk about that. They were blamed by the authorities for pushing this along. So that definitely could be an aspect specifically to this case.
Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on investigators. Like when people continuously ask them, what's going on? What's going on with the case? What's going on with the case? And it's like, we don't have anything right now. Yeah, police will say if we don't find things within first 48 hours, it's unlikely we'll ever find anything. There's a whole show on that, the first 48. But if they don't find anything, if people keep asking, it feels really stressful. And that can lead to a lot of mistakes in trying to gather future evidence.
Yeah, so this case had a lot of the dynamics we see with high-profile cases that are negative, right? The negative dynamics. So let's take a look at the background here of the individual that is presumed to be dead. She disappeared and presumed dead.
And she was declared dead in absentia.
Right, so legally, yeah.
Legally she's dead.
She's considered dead. Her name is Natalee Ann Holloway. She was born in Clinton, Mississippi on October 1, 1986. Her parents are Dave and Beth Holloway. Now, they would divorce in 1993, and Beth married a wealthy Alabama businessman named George Twitty. So the reasons I mention these names is because all these figures become important later on as we look at the investigation. So George and Beth moved to Mountain Brook, Alabama, along with Natalee. So she graduated from high school in Mountain Brook in 2005 and was going to go on to the University of Alabama. She had a full scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So really bright future. Things were looking up.
I believe her intention was to go to med school.
Right.
She had aspirations of becoming a physician.
Yeah. So you see this break between high school and college. It's a time when sometimes young people kind of let loose a little bit. And that's what we see here. There was this trip. It was referred to as an unofficial graduation trip. So I guess it wasn't sponsored by the high school. I don't know.
No, but there were some chaperones.
Yeah, there's 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there were 125 teenagers, high school graduates.
That's a pretty bad ratio. 125 to 7. I mean, that they even had chaperones at all, that's kind of surprising.
That is surprising, especially considering they've graduated from high school. If they're over the age of 18, then they're just going to be like, why do I need a chaperone? But they agreed to have chaperones.
Yeah.
They agreed to check in with the chaperones, and the chaperones said that they did check in with everybody each day that they were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we see the chaperones are a little outnumbered. Right? It's bad coverage.
I imagine. I'm sorry.
Like I was just saying, just the trip was to Aruba.
Right. They arrived in Aruba on May 26, 2005. Big group.
I imagine that, especially with a ratio like that, 125 to 7, being in a foreign country, the legal drinking age is lower than in the U.S. I imagine the chaperones had to have had a mindset of there's some things we just got to let go. Like, yeah, they're not legally able to drink in the U.S., but they are here, if they're 18. So I imagine at that point, they're like, well, we'll try to guide them. We'll try to do something, but it may not be enough. We may have to let some things go. It might have had to, I would imagine the mindset had to be a little bit looser than what they wanted to do, given a better situation.
Right. I mean, David Holloway even stated at one point that he didn't know that the legal drinking age in Aruba was 18. Mm. And had he known that, he might have tried to get Natalee not to go.
Sure. Yeah. And they said that this was drinking, which we'll get into, was abnormal behavior for her. It was probably a new thing for her, but that kind of makes sense. This, like you said, Dr. Grande, this is a trip, the kind of time where a lot of high school graduates might just choose to let go and do new things, drink, etc. Sounds like that was the case with Natalee.
Yeah, and my understanding is she was a rule follower up to this point. She did well in school. She had a scholarship, bright future. So this was probably just a time when, for all of them, or for many of them, they were just going to let loose, have some fun. They knew that the party would be over, so to speak, when they went back to the United States, the drinking age 21, so they would have some time to wait to legally drink. Right. So they could legally drink in Aruba at 18 and have their fun while they're there. Which
for a quote unquote pathological rule follower, being able to go to a place where it's now legal, it's now in bounds of the rules for me to drink. Yeah, I might see very easily be like, well, and I'll have 3. How many have I got? Like, I don't know. I'll have more. Just keep them coming, and then laying on the floor later.
Yeah.
Because I can do this. It's legal. Watch what I can do. The same thing happens often when people turn 21. Yeah. So
pretty normal behavior. Should have been expected, and probably was. So we see this group, though, they were particularly rowdy. Yeah. Right? So they went to a Holiday Inn there in Aruba, and they told them, according to the police, the people at the inn told them, don't come back next year. Like, you can't. So that's it. Like, have your fun, but we don't want to see you again. Which I think is interesting because, well, why would there be an expectation that they would return? They're not going to graduate from high school again, right?
At the same time, I'm sure the Holiday Inn couldn't have said, like, well, I guess they could have, but at some point, maybe they couldn't have said, why don't you just go somewhere else or something. Maybe they could. I don't know. Maybe that was the best recourse. Don't come back next year.
It might have been more along the lines of, don't come back.
Yeah, just next year.
Next year, go somewhere else. Don't come back.
Yeah.
So we see that Natalee started every morning with cocktails. She missed breakfast on 2 occasions, which I guess was unusual. And even her fellow classmates thought that her drinking was out of control, which I found to be interesting. Because
some of her other classmates who were probably drinking to excess often themselves were looking at her going like, whoa.
Yeah, there's a red flag there.
It's like, I've had 7 in the last hour. She's had 15. Like, whoa.
Yeah, so 4 days. So we go May 26th, they arrive. May 30, early in the morning, is where we pick up. So she's had a few days of drinking, having fun, meeting people, exciting nightlife, going to different places. And
they're supposed to head home that day.
Right, that is the last, the party's over.
The last day of the vacation.
So on May 30 at 1:30 a.m., she was seen leaving a nightclub called Carlos and Charlie's. And it's not and, it's like an N.
Carlos and Charlie's.
They're trying to be hip.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
Yeah. I realize it's a name. It can't be proper grammar necessarily, but it still bothers me. I don't know.
I think they were trying to go with Carlos N and Charlie S, but the sign got messed up. That's possible.
It became Carlos and Charlie's.
Somebody got the wrong memo. Yeah, that makes sense.
So she left with 3 individuals. Now, I made a video on this before, and I saw some comments that I mispronounced this one guy's name. I think I have it right now. So One of the people was a 17-year-old Dutch honor student named Joran Van der Sloot.
Yeah. Joran or Joran?
Joran Van der Sloot, all right. And we have a 21-year-old Deepak Kalpo and his 18-year-old brother, Satish Kalpo. So we have 3 individuals, and I'm pretty sure this is undisputed. Everybody knows that she was with them. This isn't like one person says something, another person says something else, which is common in these cases, and we'll get to that nightmare later. But for now, everybody agrees.
At Carlos and Charlie's, there were multiple witnesses that saw all 4 of them together.
Yeah, and I don't think they have denied it either.
No.
Right, so...
I don't believe that they've denied, that any of them have denied being at Carlos and Charlie's and speaking with her and kind of drinking and partying with her a little bit.
Is that the only thing they haven't denied, perhaps?
They've denied a lot. Their stories have changed.
The stories have changed quite a bit, so there have been a lot of different denials, but I think that's one of the consistent things. And I think they didn't change that because so many other people saw them there.
Yeah.
It was a big public restaurant.
Yeah.
Many people.
Right, so at that point, she leaves with them, and according to the reports available, she was very intoxicated. Right, so maybe in a little bit vulnerable position, and it's not really clear, I imagine, that the men had some drinks as well, but I don't know that. It's a place where drinking would be common. So either way, they leave.
It's likely.
It seems reasonable to believe, it might have been a little bit there. So they leave, and again, that was, as you mentioned, that was the day she was supposed to go. Mm-hmm. And her classmates start looking for her because they're like, hey, the plane's leaving in a while, and they can't find her. Her passport and her luggage are still in her room, but no Natalee. So they started to worry. Law enforcement searched around. They couldn't find anything. And here we see that Beth and Greg, so Beth Holloway, Greg Twitty, they fly out right away on a private jet, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they fly out, and we see that kind of gets the police moving a little bit more with the investigation. They realize that Van der Sloot was the last person to be with Natalee, and they stopped by his residence. And my understanding is that her parents were there too, at least for part of this incident, maybe the whole incident. They stopped by his residence, and I think they also, I guess at his residence, his father was there. So there's some different confrontations. The timeline isn't always clear, but we know that we see kind of this effect already early on, that maybe because her parents were American, there was a little tension, right? So we know that when Americans travel abroad, there's this stereotype that occurs sometimes that they are impolite in other places. Some Americans probably are. I'm sure some are not.
I'm sure there are quite a few. And in any given situation, people tend to remember the negative experiences more than the positive experiences. So if you're at a hotel in a wonderful place and you have 100 Americans come in and they're all wonderful, and you have one American comes in and they're terrible, all Americans are terrible after that. Like, it's just a thing. It's a thing that happens in even in like retail. You can have 100 people have a great experience in a retail establishment, and they're going to talk about it like to one person each. You find one person who has a bad experience, they're going to talk about it to everybody they meet.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell everybody about it. So that negative experience tends to have a bigger impact. So, yeah, when you have a negative experiences with a group of people, and then somebody comes in and they immediately have an attitude, you go on the defensive. So I think you're right. I think that's happened with the Aruban authorities, that they kind of immediately took a step back into a defensive place because, understandably, the Twitties were very upset.
Well, that's the key word, right? I understand if there's a group of Americans and they repeatedly have experiences where Americans are rude or whatever. But these people, their daughter was missing. You have to cut them a little bit of a break. Anybody from any country going to any other country would be a little bit distrustful of a system they don't understand.
Yeah.
Especially when she lived her whole life with no problems, and all of a sudden she's in Aruba and she's missing. I think they were justified to say, I'm pretty upset and I want something to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Go interview some people. Go talk to some people, especially people who last saw her. Mm-hmm. That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
It's like it's been it's been almost 24 hours. Why haven't you talked to the last people? You know who the last person they were with. Why haven't you talked to them yet?
Yeah, I can see their point of view. So here we see that Van der Sloot denied knowing anything about Natalee. So he's starting off with a tradition here that he maintains through the entire investigation, which is deception.
Yeah.
Then he changed his story and said that the older brother, Deepak Kalpoe, had driven Natalee to the beach because she wanted to see the sharks. So he was with them. And when they were finished, they dropped her off at her motel or hotel, whatever it was, around 2 a.m. So no problem. No reason she should be missing.
Right.
Leave me alone. Go my way now.
I don't know why she's missing. You know, this other guy took her over there. Deepak, my friend, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, so he was just pretty much trying to play it off. And he did say that Natalee was, he suggested, implied, that she was very intoxicated, saying she fell out of the vehicle. And he offered to help her, and she refused. So like a little belligerent or whatever, you know, giving this impression that she was in bad shape. And as he was driving away, as Ms. Kalpoe was driving away, he was in the car, he saw a dark man wearing a black shirt approach Holloway. And he said, essentially implied, it could have been a security guard because they wear the same outfit there.
And that was important too, because police would, I think, detain or at least talk to security guards at another hotel on another occasion. They were known for, I guess, picking up young women or picking up women. So you know, he was probably aware of that. Van der Sloot was probably aware of that.
Yeah, on June 5th, they did pick up 2 former security guards that had that reputation. And you know, I talked about this in my other video. It seemed like the strategy here, at least for these police officers, was just arrest everybody, detain everybody, and maybe somebody will help you out.
I think that's how it works in Aruba. Before, like in America, we can talk to somebody as long as you give them Miranda rights, but they're not officially under arrest until charges are filed. But in Aruba, they're arrested before they're talked to. Like we put you under arrest and take you into custody, and then we can question, and we don't have to file charges for a certain period of time. But they have to do it that way. So like each time they wanted to really talk to and interrogate somebody, they had to arrest them, which is why we see like multiple arrests of the same people over and over again. And that's something I think that's really hard for Americans to understand. If we arrest somebody in America, it's because we have charges.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So if you're arrested, wow, we must really have something, and you're gonna go to court for it unless you plea out. In Aruba, it doesn't seem to be the case. Right. Arrest is just how we bring somebody in to talk.
Right. There has to be probable cause in the U.S. And it doesn't seem like they had.
In Aruba, I don't believe they do. I don't think they have to have that probable cause. I think arrest is just, we want to talk to you. Come here. Like, you're under arrest.
Yeah, and they use that, you know, they function in that way a lot. Now, the security guards, they were let go, right? So, like, again, another pattern we see is catch and release. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that going on. Now, 4 days later, on June 9, Van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers were arrested on suspicion of homicide and kidnapping. So we went from missing person to homicide victim, kidnap victim. 8 days later, they also arrested a disc jockey. And then 5 days after this, Van der Sloot's father was arrested, right?
Yeah. Paul Van der Sloot
was, I think, yeah.
Paul. What's interesting about him is he actually was a judge. He had all sorts of connections.
So it's important here to give a little history. My understanding of Aruba is that it's under jurisdiction of the Netherlands. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be political influences across the ocean there, right? It wasn't just like Aruba; it was outside influences. And I think the Netherlands did play an active role in this case later on.
Mm-hmm. I think control. They had some influence in it from the beginning when they were doing the search for Natalee. Like, there was a huge search for her. It wasn't just the police. There were volunteers of all sorts. Like, there were 50 Marines from the Dutch Navy that came out and helped to search portions of the island.
They had F-16s out there from the military. They gave the federal or state, or whatever they call them, they gave the workers of the country or the state the day off, I think, to search for them. So there's definitely government.
Yeah, on one of the days, they gave like every single civil servant on the island a day off and said, use this day off to go search for Natalee Holloway.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible search effort.
Was it, so you just mentioned about Van der Sloot and Cowper brothers getting arrested. Am I correct here that their story changed again, that they had dropped her off at the beach?
Spoiler alert, their story changed like every time.
I could have said that any day. And like, yeah, you're probably
any
right.
point. It's like they were arrested, I think, I think Van der Sloot was arrested like 3 or 4 times. His story changed each time.
Yeah,
the Cowper brothers each were arrested, I think, twice. But their stories remain relatively the same.
Yeah, they didn't change as much.
They didn't change as much. Some minor details changed, but to be honest, over a period of time, that's what you expect.
Yeah, so we see the disc jockey and Van der Sloot's father are released. And this is where we see the multiple stories now from Van der Sloot and the 2 brothers. So at one point they said that Van der Sloot and Natalee were dropped off at a beach near the Marriott Hotel. And this becomes a familiar narrative, the Marriott Hotel beach. That comes up a lot. Van der Sloot said he just left. That was it. Like he was at the beach with her, and he left, and he felt badly about it. Then we see these kind of a tangent comes in with this gardener and the jogger, right? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it seems pretty likely these 2 were not credible at all. As I understand it, the jogger was a convicted criminal, maybe had a bit of reputation for doing, for deceiving, and the stories were a little bit on the nose, right? So the gardener said he saw the Van der Sloot and the brothers between 2:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. near the beach, and the jogger, his story was much more fantastic. He said he saw the men burying a woman with blonde hair. I mean, that seems bad, right? I mean, if you see that, if that's true, then
yeah. He said that he saw them burying a blonde-haired woman in a landfill.
Right, in a landfill
in the afternoon
on May 30. Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious what their landfills are like. Because
Yeah,
I can't just walk into a landfill and just, here's a body and,
Yeah, I got a body in the back of it. Can I just drop that off here?
Yeah, right.
Plus, like, middle of the afternoon, like, that one really seems really off to me. Because if you are going to bury a body in a landfill, why would you do it in the middle of the afternoon?
They had already searched the landfill, I think, at that point, too. So then I think there was another thing to search the landfill. And
the jogger said it was on the afternoon of May 30th. So, like, they hadn't even really gotten into full swing on the search yet.
Is that when the jogger?
Yeah, the jogger said it was the afternoon of May 30th was when they saw the 3 men burying a blonde-haired woman in the landfill.
I thought it was when he told police that they had already searched the landfill. And then
when the jogger came forward and told him it was after they searched the landfill, but he said that he saw it happen on the 30th before they'd searched the landfill.
Right.
Yeah, and they
hadn't found anything in the landfill. Just
trash.
They also searched based.
They found trash. They did find trash. Yeah,
based on the gardener, they searched as well. So a lot of search efforts. You know, with the way the police in Aruba were doing, I have to wonder, like, they kind of have a Barney Fife vibe they're giving off. Wonder if they would talk to that jogger, and if he'd said something like, well, she was a brunette, they'd be like, oh, all right, we're not going to worry about it. They were burying somebody, like, that's bad, right? Like, pay attention.
It's like we're looking for a blonde-haired woman. Oh, the one I saw them burying was brunette. Oh, all right. Oh.
Never mind.
You can go.
Yeah,
Thanks.
go ahead. See you later.
Wait, never mind. We're going to arrest you.
Yeah, we're going to have to arrest you. For what? I don't like your shoes. We need to talk about those shoes. Where'd you get them?
Might be a little bit too soon for the shoe stuff. Given that he couldn't find his shoes. I don't know. Like, might have to arrest you at this point. I don't know.
No. Oh, good thing we're not on Aruba.
A lot of arresting going on there.
Just a lot of arresting in this case.
So we see that they're let go, and they're placed under arrest again in August, in late August. And another suspect is also arrested, a 21-year-old. The 4 suspects were released with some restrictions, and then 11 days later, they're like, now, you're totally free. So back to square one. And here we see that Van der Sloot goes on kind of an interview spree. Right? He gives interviews, even though he's not really completely cleared. I mean, he's not currently.
Right. He's not currently being detained, so
yeah, it seems odd.
They've arrested me 4 times. They haven't charged me with anything. Let me go on Larry King.
Seems like an odd move.
I don't think he actually did go on Larry King himself.
No, I don't think it was Larry King, but he did give interviews.
But he did.
And he said that he wanted to, or she wanted to have sex, and he didn't have a condom, so he said no. So I found that a little unusual, but that's what he said. And then he said that, I guess after he turned her down, she wanted him to stay on the beach, but then he had to go to school the next morning. So he turns down sex and wants to get to school. Okay. It's one of these things, is it possible? Sure. But
he also said that the reason he initially lied was because he was ashamed. Because Natalee asked to be left at the beach, and he did. And it was like 3 a.m. and it's in the dark and everything. And so he felt ashamed for having left her there and didn't come forward immediately because he figured she would show up. But the more she didn't turn up, the more guilty he felt for, and the more ashamed he felt for just leaving her behind. A very altruistic guy, apparently.
Yeah. He's a regular angel there. And I think maybe he believed people would see him that way with these lies. Like, I mean, I'm going to presume they're lies. But.
And then 5 years later, he was convicted of murder.
Right.
Of someone else and completely.
That's right. Which
someone else,
to, yeah.
Someone else completely. Yeah. Not convicted of Natalee Holloway's murder. But he was convicted of murder of somebody else completely. This angel who was so ashamed of having left this girl alone on the beach. Killed somebody else.
So now some time goes by. So this gets into kind of a long stretch in this investigation. We see the deputy chief involved said that Natalee probably basically drank herself to death. Right, alcohol poisoning. And he said that she was carrying illegal substances. I find it interesting he would know that. They didn't find her.
We haven't found her body. None of the illegal substances were any of her stuff that she was getting ready to take to the airport to take home with her. But, yeah, we know that she was carrying illegal substances on her. I'd like to know how.
Yeah. I don't know if he ever talked about that. So, yeah, maybe, some victim blaming going on here, kind of really overplaying the fact that she was intoxicated, overplaying the contribution that would have. I mean, certainly, like I said, it made her vulnerable, but it didn't kill her. Somebody else probably killed her, right? That's how it works. Mm-hmm. So he was really just trying to say, no, the alcohol acted alone. Alcohol was the only suspect. But then we see in 2006...
Right, and he also said that somebody probably later hid her body.
Right.
Not sure why.
Yeah.
Like if she went down to the beach and died of alcohol poisoning on the beach, somebody just came along and went, well, this shouldn't be here.
Yeah, hid her body so well that the military, all the civil servants, all the volunteers, the police, no one could find her. So they really want to do a good job hiding her.
Again, altruistic.
Yeah.
Can't have this here.
All just good people.
Just clean up the beach. Yeah. Clean up the beach. Get rid of it. Come on.
Just trying to keep things tidy. So in 2006, we see that new suspects are arrested. Nothing happens. And in 2007, Van der Sloot and the Calpo brothers are once again detained. This was probably like, they're walking in the police station saying hi to everybody. Oh, I see you redecorated this room over here. Like, how familiar were they with this environment? This is just like, here we go again,
It's like, well, the authorities from the Netherlands came in and took over the investigation at the request of the Aruban government. They asked for more seasoned investigators to come take over the investigation. So which is one of the reasons we see like additional arrests and re-interviews of witnesses and things during that time period in 2007.
Yeah, so the end of 2007, the case is officially declared closed. And you would think that would be the end. But in January 2008, it was reopened. And once again, it was because Van der Sloot was talking. This time he got captured on a hidden camera, essentially saying that Natalee started shaking and became unresponsive, and he disposed of her body. So back to that theory where she died and her body was hidden, disposed of,
right.
Hidden. But he said that he really didn't mean that. He was using marijuana. That's why he gave that statement. So that didn't happen. That was just talking.
He gave the statement because he was under the influence of marijuana at the time he was making the statement, which is the only reason why he said anything. Is the cannabis did the talking for him.
Alcohol comes into the system. Cannabis comes into the system, does the talking for you. There's a lot going on in Aruba.
Alcohol killed Natalee, and cannabis made, Joran Van der Sloot lie about being there when she died.
Basically possessed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, took over. So we see that he gives another interview, so he just can't stop talking.
He just can't stop.
And this time he
can't
says
stop.
Natalee was sold into sexual slavery and is...
Oh, yeah, that was when he was trying to when he offered 250. He offered to tell where she was in exchange for $250,000 or something like that. And
well, that gets to the bribery in 2010, right?
Oh, those 2010 was later. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is incredible. Classic Van der Sloot. Right? In 2010, he attempts to extort Beth, Natalee's mother, through a representative. He offered to reveal information about Natalee's death in exchange for $250,000. The FBI became involved, and they transferred the money, and he provided clearly false information. He referenced a structure that didn't even exist at the time. She disappeared.
I read some quotes from the lawyer that was involved. His name is John Q. Kelly. And the name John Q., I mean...
Public.
Public.
Right.
That's the correct last name. Public.
Do you think that they were intentional about, like, to get Q, something with Q as a middle name, they had to be really intentional about that. Like, I don't know, but either way.
Yeah. Quentin, Quincy.
Well, I mean, it's like
There's not a lot of
There's
names.
not a lot,
Yeah.
right. No. But it's cool
Quark.
nonetheless. Quark.
He's a Ferengi on a space station out there. Yeah.
There you go. So John Q. Kelly. So Van der Sloot sends him an email and talks about this $250,000. So John Q. Kelly, goes down to Aruba on Easter in 2010. He didn't tell anybody but his wife and I think Natalee's parents that he was going down there. But he didn't bring any money. So I think he was kind of trying to test Van der Sloot. Like, is this guy serious about it? I want to build some rapport here, but I'm not going to give him what he wants right away. You get the impression that Van der Sloot was desperate or something. So he goes down there. So Van der Sloot is mad, and I didn't realize this until I read these quotes. He's like 6'4", like 250 pounds, and he said he's a very intimidating guy, and I didn't realize that about Van der Sloot. So Kelly goes down there with no money, starts talking to him, and Van der Sloot's, he's mad. He's like, I thought you were coming down here with some money, like with $250,000 or something.
Well, he'd have been 22 at that point. He was 17 in 2005.
So it's 2010.
2010 is 5 years later, so he's 22. It easily could have put on a lot of bulk since 2005. Where most of the pictures that we see of him are from right around the time when Natalee disappeared. And yeah, at 17 years old, he wasn't a very intimidating person at all. So I can see how he could have bulked up and gotten bigger as he matured physically.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Kelly goes down there, is talking to him, and they don't really get anywhere, but he kind of gets to know him. So then my understanding is about a month later, Kelly offers John Q. Kelly offers Van der Sloot $100, and that's enough for Van der Sloot to be like, yeah, I'll talk to you again. So again, he sees this desperation and really plays to it. He's like, all it takes is $100. Goes back down to Aruba. And so at this point, I think this is the point where the FBI is involved. So he brings $25,000. I think it was $10,000 at first, then $15,000 or something. And so John Q. Kelly already knew what was going to happen. Either he confesses to something, or he takes the money and he gets arrested for extortion and whatever else. So they lead him to the house, and then they realize this house wasn't even built. And so he claims that that his dad put the body in the foundation of this house. And then they find out, this house wasn't even built. So at that point, the police or whomever else decided they still had to build a case. So they knew that he took the money. They knew that Van der Sloot took the money. But they stated they didn't have enough to arrest him or to bring him in, which is so surprising because they would arrest him the drop of a hat before. So they didn't arrest him, much to that was an ill-advised move by many people, and it
turned out to be a very ill-advised move because this is like the 29th of March, when this stuff is happening. Like
so he was down there in May,
yeah,
or April and May, but either way, right around there. Yeah.
Well, it was March when Van der Sloot contacted John Q. Kelly. Yeah. March 29th, exactly. But what's interesting is by May 30th, there's a complete change in everything. Yeah. And like, so all of the stuff that John Q. Kelly did with all of this and all of the extortion and everything, and Van der Sloot saying, you know, that the body was buried in the foundation of this building, which wasn't even being built at that time, all turned out to be a load of BS. And on June 3rd of that year, he was charged in U.S. District Court of Northern Alabama with extortion and wire fraud, which was interesting because on May 30th, Stephanie Flores Ramirez, a 21-year-old business student in Lima, Peru, was reported missing. And she was found dead 3 days later.
Yeah, in a hotel room registered to
Van der Sloot. Which meant that he was there on May 30th in that hotel room, you know, a few days before he would be charged with this in the United States, with the wire fraud and stuff in the United States. He was in Lima, Peru. And he was then arrested the same day, June 3rd, same day he was charged in the United States with extortion and wire fraud. He was arrested in Peru, arrested in Chile, to be deported back to be extradited back to Peru on murder charges.
Yeah, and this time he did something unusual. He confessed to homicide.
They pled guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess just having the body was enough to convince them. You know, Natalie's missing. Obviously, Stephanie Flores Ramirez, they found her. Maybe he just felt like he couldn't get out of it.
I think there are a couple of major differences between this particular case and the other. Like, there's a slew of evidence. Like, there's just preponderance of evidence. I don't think they had anything that could have led to more to him in that particular case. Like, they had his name, like a lot of his DNA was in the room where she was found. They had the murder weapon, or what they believe was a murder weapon, which is a tennis racket that was used to beat her to death. And I think one of the other big things was that Joran didn't have his father. He didn't have his father to advise him in anything.
That's a good point.
In this, like, and he's in Peru, which Aruba would have been someplace he was very comfortable with. He was there for a long time. He was very comfortable there. Lima, living at a hotel, probably wasn't as comfortable there. He didn't have his father, and I think that's one of the reasons why he admitted it.
He was down there for a poker tournament as well. I wonder if the money was a factor. Maybe he was running out of money. Maybe he wasn't doing as well as he thought.
Oh, it probably was, because Stephanie Flores was missing a bunch of money in jewelry. Like, she won $10,000 at that casino the night before the two of them went back to his hotel, and she also had another $1,000 on her that her father had given her so that she could buy a laptop, and like all of that was missing. All of her expensive jewelry was missing. So, I mean, like, I think definitely was a case of, like, he needed the money.
Yeah.
He needed to go.
Yeah, so he was charged with first-degree murder and robbery. He said that he killed her because she accessed his laptop without permission and found files connected to Natalee. Which is odd. Now he's kind of implicating himself again in that crime or disappearance. But the police were like, no, you robbed her. It was all about money. Yeah. And in 2012...
It very likely was.
Yeah, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 28 years. That's first-degree murder, 28 years. Yeah. Much different than the United States.
In Peru, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although technically in some states that would be possible, but usually life is the...
Life or life without parole.
Yeah.
Or death in some states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so he'll actually... he's a young guy. Likely get out of prison someday.
Yeah, he's 24 at that point, so yeah.
Yeah, very likely. I don't know how rough prisons are in Peru, but
50, 52, something like that when he gets out.
Yeah.
Do you guys know anything about charges for the...
No, Jeff, I don't know anything about Peruvian prisons. Like, I've never been to one.
Don't ask me again. Do you guys know anything about...
That's the fifth time you've asked me about Peruvian prisons. Come on now.
I just don't tell anyone, but I want to know. All right? There's no reason. The indictment for the extortion. Do we know, if he got charged with anything, or what he got charged with, or how many, what that's going to look like for him?
I guess it's waiting for him. He's charged, so it'll go on until it gets released. So
yeah, and it's not that they haven't filed charges yet, and statute of limitations will go up. Like, they've made the charges, they filed those charges, so it'll wait till he gets out of prison.
Yeah.
Unless the State Department really wants to get him, and then they'll try and get Peru to extradite him up here. And in countries that have extradition treaties with the United States, like, the U.S. doesn't lose.
I believe Peru, though. I think Peru made it clear that they would see him when the sentence was over.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think.
I think the State Department is going to be fine with that. He's in prison. It's not like he's running free.
That's a boatload of time. 28 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's surprisingly small for the United States by our standards here, but it is technically a lot of time.
Yeah.
And there are some places in the U.S. where, second degree and sometimes even a first degree murder does 30 years. They're eligible for parole and they get out. Although it's lifetime probation after that. But 28 years, 30 years. It's a long sentence. He'll be a different person by the time he gets out. It's a lot of time in prison. So, as it stands, if he killed Natalee Holloway, he got away with that crime.
It seems likely, given all of the changing of the stories, it probably was that he was way too intoxicated to even really remember clearly, but that he's involved. There's uncorroborated stories from his best friend John, who it's all hearsay, not all hearsay, but some of it's hearsay that Joran told him what happened that night. Said that she started foaming at the mouth, started convulsing, and he had given her GHB. And that she was overdosing, so he called his dad because he knew that if they tested and found GHB and he was the last one there, it would be a thing. So his dad came down to the beach and said, "Don't ever say anything to anybody." And they took her body, loaded it up, and went to the state forest and buried her underneath the cactus plants. The same guy says that a couple of years later, when police were investigating again, he got scared that they were going to go searching in the forest, so he paid him $1,500 to go out there and move the body, take it to a morgue, put it in the incinerator and incinerate it, and then take the ashes down to the beach, spread them on the beach at low tide. And this is all the stuff that this John said claimed. It's really weird because he didn't specifically claim it as an actuality. He put it as a hypothetical. This is what could have happened. And he was talking to somebody else who was trying to help Natalee's father in the investigation back in 2012. And that guy was like, "This is the story that he told me." So we got hearsay,
Hearsay of the hearsay.
Hearsay of the hearsay. But apparently the hearsay we have from the second guy, that John told him directly, that he went out to where Natalee was buried, dug down, grabbed a burlap sack out that had her bones in it, and then he did take that to the morgue and incinerated it and got rid of the ashes. And the big deal about that was looking into it. Like, if we can find that site, if we can find the place where she was buried, there'd still be DNA evidence, because a burlap sack is not going to hold all of the desiccated remains. It's not watertight enough to hold on to that. So there would be some evidence, and they'd be able to say this is true, which would then corroborate stories and things like that. But, one of the things that John said was like, you remember how OJ wrote that book, If I Did It? Right? It's all hypothetical. Like, if I did it, this is what would happen. He's like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm talking about, like, if it's a hypothetical situation. And he's trying to really keep himself out from any charges that could happen. But yeah, Joran looks like the only real suspect.
Yeah, now his Van der Sloot sneakers were never found, the sneakers that he wore that night, which seems odd. Why get rid of your sneakers if there's nothing on them that's incriminating? No witnesses can verify his whereabouts after he said he left Natalee at the Marriott Hotel Beach. So no one saw him at all. And a fisherman's hut, which was very close to where he said he was broken into that morning, and a machete and a lobster trap were stolen. So again, we see all these little clues that seem to point to guilt, but we'll never know.
Right. And I'm not going to say that Van der Sloot's father, Paulus Van der Sloot, was complicit in it, and because we have no exact evidence of that, but he was well connected amongst the police, amongst prosecutors, the lawyers, attorneys of the island. He was a judge. If he really wanted to protect, and even if Joran didn't do it, just being under suspicion, he could have pulled all sorts of strings, and that's where some of the corruption comes in this investigation. That's a big criticism of the investigation, was how involved his father was. Mm-hmm. Like, how involved was he in pushing investigations in different directions? Like, were the two ex-security guards arrested and looked at just because, Paulus said, find somebody else. It's not my boy. Like, or, if Joran did do it and Paulus was involved in at least the aftermath, covering it up. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, he died as well, so of natural causes. So we can't really ask him. It's all supposition, allegations, because we just don't have any evidence.
Yeah, there's definitely there's corruption, and there's a stranger in a strange land effect that goes on. Whenever you have nationals from one country go to another and a crime's committed, like against them, they're victims. The people feel like they're being cheated, no matter what the country is, no matter where you're going from and to. And here you have Americans going to Aruba and feeling as though they don't know what they're doing. The Aruban authorities had some choice words for Americans. Like, everybody's basically accusing everyone else of being incompetent and impolite. And I think there are some complications with that. I mean, they were in a foreign country. The parents weren't familiar with the system. They didn't know what to expect. They were probably concerned about corruption, which I think was a founded concern in the specific instance here. Not that Aruba's corrupt all the time or anything. And then you have this effort to defend the tourism business, which is massive. Can't overstate how incredible that is for Aruba. Like, they don't need this idea that you come over there and then you go missing and you're never found. That's
not the tagline on there.
No, that's not what they want. That's not the subtitle they want on Aruba. Aruba, send your kids here. They'll go missing.
Get lost in paradise. Forever. Yeah. Yes,
that's not exactly the underscore we want on that particular note. We want to. This Aruba's a really safe place. Listen to the Beach Boys. They know what they're talking about.
That's right. They love Aruba
and Jamaica. And Key Largo and Montego.
Mike, just break out the song. Come on, we're all waiting for.
Sorry, we don't have the rights to the song, so I can't actually go singing. But everybody knows what I'm talking about.
So that's the case. So this case ends with one person being in prison for a crime completely unrelated to what we started talking about, and an unsolved, most likely homicide, but who knows, of an American who just graduated from high school.
And if it really was alcohol poisoning or something like that killed her on the beach and he was there, he could have called for help.
Yeah, and he had every incentive to call for help.
He had every incentive
to kill her or to let her die and then get rid of the body. It makes no sense.
But I think that the aspect of, like, if there was date rape drug involved, it was GHB involved or something else illicit that was involved, that's where it becomes more than just, she drank so much that she died from this. It's, now I got to figure out how did this drug get in her system? And just saying, I don't know, is not going to be enough, because then the police are going to look closer, and then they'll find where he had the GHB or something like that. And so her body had to disappear. It had to go away.
One of the theories is that he was doing something illegal and killed her, but that wasn't what he set out to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like some type of assault. And he went too far, or his actions plus her, having a lot of alcohol in her system. Maybe she fell, hit her head, something happened, where he caused her death, and just didn't want to face the consequences. Even though he could have said, "Look, it wasn't." Who knows what the penalty would have been in Aruba? It's not really clear. We never got to that point because they detain people, but they don't convict people.
Or maybe he wasn't involved. Maybe it was somebody else, and we'll never know because the police didn't investigate. They didn't arrest that one person.
That's right. The one person in Aruba.
The one person in Aruba they didn't arrest in this case is the one who did it. We don't know, but maybe. And the thing is, we don't have a body. It's likely that she's dead.
Yeah.
But the story of her being sold into slavery. Maybe it happened.
It's possible.
If it happened, then maybe she's out there alive somewhere or has died from something else since, and we'll never know.
Yeah. The one theory I think is very unlikely is that she disappeared. That she decided that it was time for a change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think she faked her own death and went missing. Went you know what? I'm moving to Japan. I don't think that's the case.
She had no resources.
No,
she didn't even have her passport.
Right.
So.
Yeah, all her stuff was in the hotel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that I
really don't think that while that intoxicated for 4 days, she found the one forger on the island who could actually make her a fake passport.
That's a good point. She was compromised. How did she orchestrate her?
Incredibly intoxicated, but she came up with this brilliant plan to fake her death. I don't think that's the case.
One of the things that I was curious about, and maybe one of you guys can speak to it, but at what point does a suspect tell enough lies or say enough things and then retract them that the police are like, wait a minute, no, we can't do this again? I mean, can it be like a 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing? You tell 3 things and then you retract them all, and then they're like, no, the 4th one, we're going to believe that one. Even when they got it on tape and he didn't know it was being recorded. Like, all right, marijuana. But, I mean, somebody at some point has to say, like, no, I'm putting my foot down. This is enough. I don't know how often they see that. Maybe officers see that.
I think police see that a lot, but I think the difficulty is you have to have corroborating evidence. You have to have something that contradicts what their statement is. Yeah. Like if they're like, well, I was at Wendy's at 3 a.m., and you have, a receipt in their wallet from, McDonald's across town, you can say, well, we don't believe that you were at Wendy's. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I was at Jack in the Box. There are no Jack in the Boxes in Delaware. Like, how are you at Jack in the Box?
Yeah. There used to be.
There used to be.
Many years ago.
Not anymore.
Yeah, they're gone. I was just...
they don't have any Hardee's either.
I think there's a Hardee's left in Delaware.
Is there?
Yeah, I think on Route 40.
Is there one still in Bay?
I believe there is.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Maybe Sam can check that out for us.
Yeah. Check out the real importance.
That's right.
It's the important detail,
this
Sam.
Critical detail for the case. So I was doing researching a case earlier on Rebecca Schaefer, who was a young lady that was killed by a celebrity stalker. She was a celebrity back in the 80s, mid-80s. And the killer, Robert John Bardo, worked as a janitor at Jack in the Box, if I'm not mistaken, in Arizona. And I was thinking about that when I was working on the video. I'm like, are they still around? I don't think they're still around, right?
Not here, not in Delaware. I think it's more of a West Coast thing. Now I think they're still around.
Are they still around?
They're still around, but I think it's more West Coast.
Okay.
And it might be it's a much smaller number than it used to be after the E. coli thing in the early 90s. There's a huge thing with Jack in the Box and E. coli, just really bad. But
you don't want that when you're in your restaurant business.
No, you don't want that. Yeah, you also don't want to have salmonella. Apparently, that we found that the Rajneeshis are doing that. We're doing that. Right. I think biggest bioterrorism with salmonella in the salads.
Yeah, bad for the business.
Watch out for the episode of alien lizard humanoids on.
That's right.
On the Rajneesh.
That was a wild case.
Yeah, it's a wild case.
All right, so that's the case of Natalee Holloway. Any final thoughts on this case?
Like I said, I think it's really bad investigation, potential for some corruption. Yeah.
Yeah. And the lack of evidence is surprising, but perhaps that's just because of the bad investigation and missteps and arresting people, but not perhaps doing things with that and the corruption and so forth.
This is a case of a whole lot of lack of evidence and then no conviction, unlike some other cases where there's a whole lot of lack of evidence and then somebody's convicted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to your point, Jeff, Van der Sloot lied a lot, and it just seems strange, right? It seems unusual. You know, typically a suspect or detainee, whatever he's considered in Aruba, if somebody's lying like that, it doesn't look good for him.
Yeah.
And then with him committing a homicide, how many people commit homicide? That's not a popular occurrence. So he looks very, very guilty, but...
Prisons are full of people who commit homicide. Oh, wait, sorry. Prisons are full of innocent people.
That's right.
Everyone in prison is innocent.
Yeah. They're it's political.
Yeah.
You know, or a former spouse framed them, or... Yeah, there's all kinds of...
My dead wife framed me for her murder.
From beyond the grave with a time machine. All right, yeah, so unusual case.
Those white demons.
The Ronnie O'Neill.
Right.
See that on the murder part?
That's right, we have another murder part on Ronnie O'Neill, fascinating case. And as you mentioned, the alien lizard humanoids on the Rajneeshis, the Neo-Sannyasins, fascinating. So we'll wrap it up there with Natalee Holloway, a case that we hope someday gets resolved, but it doesn't look good, doesn't look promising.
Unlikely.
People have to be satisfied with Van der Sloot being in prison for something else. He's in prison either way. So.
He's in prison for murder.
Yeah.
Not Natalee's, but he is in prison for murder.
Yeah, so maybe there was some... that's enough justice. That'll have to be enough justice, but it seems unsatisfying. All right, so... That's it for this episode of The Murder Part. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure being here.
Please put any thoughts you have about this case in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching.